At least Darryl gets to meet the publisher.
What'll I do when you are far away and I am blue? What'll I do?
And Leslie Joseph stars in a new comedy series, The Queen of Romance, this Wednesday at 7 o'clock on Radio 2.
Of you that won't come true. What'll I do? That won't come true. What'll I do?
Is he really dead?
Remy is still fresh in my memory.
He is fresh in all our memories.
Or just the love slave of the communist resistance?
Faster, peasant, faster! My knickers are next.
Allo, Allo, tomorrow at 8 on BBC One.
Hi.
On Good Morning tomorrow, there's plenty of food for thought.
Phone in on 021 609 9000. It's all about the plants we can use as medicines.
We meet a young boy who for the past 3 years has eaten nothing but spam.
And he's looking pretty good on it, as you'll see.
Our Dr. Mark Porter will be with us, as will Arthur Daly's minder, Gary Webster.
So that's Good Morning tomorrow at 10:30.
In Did You See on BBC Two now, Jeremy Paxman is joined by George Melly, Ian Talbot and Larry Turner to discuss the animated tales of Shakespeare and Jennifer Saunders' new comedy series, Absolutely Fabulous. In Telltale Hearts in 50 minutes here on One, Becky and Sally confront Stedman and the truth begins to emerge at last. Now at 9:10, the news with Michael Burke.
British farmers would be casualties of a deal on world trade, according to leaked EC documents. They say a third of arable land would have to go out of production. And the Chancellor talks of worry over public borrowing and won't rule out tax increases in the budget. Good evening. At the start of a week in which Europe and America will try to avoid a world trade war, documents have been leaked that suggest British farmers would lose out heavily if a compromise is finally agreed. They're internal European Commission documents, which say that more than a third of British arable land would have to be set aside, taken out of production. The documents appear to have been leaked by French officials, intent on undermining the GATT trade talks, which will resume on Wednesday.
As the European Commission prepares for critical new talks with the United States to avoid a threatened trade war, new attempts are being made to undermine Ray McSharry, the key agriculture negotiator. He won a trial of strength with Jacques Delors, the Commission president, by insisting that a deal can be done with the Americans without breaching the community's common agricultural policy. But now an internal European Commission study has been deliberately leaked, apparently by French officials, attempting to show the deal Mr. McSharry wants to sign would force further and unacceptable cuts on farmers, in exchange for American agreement to a whole package of measures liberalising world trade. The document says Ray McSharry is under pressure from both John Gummer, the Agriculture Minister, and John Major to get a deal. Farmers have seized on the leaked paper as evidence that pressure to get a world trade deal ignores their interests. In particular, the new suggestion that farmers could be forced to set aside or leave uncultivated a third of their land to meet American demands for deeper cuts in Europe's farm subsidies.
I want to see a settlement of GATT. I believe it's in the interests of British agriculture, but we've been absolutely consistent and said that it's not a settlement on any terms. If you're talking about a settlement that caused the sort of numbers you're saying, 30 or 40% set aside, the whole countryside would change.
Tomorrow, John Gummer, the Agriculture Minister, will chair the latest meeting of his community colleagues, when the French will fight again against the emerging GATT deal. But Mr Gummer is dismissive of the latest leak.
No one knows what the arrangements are. We haven't done a deal yet. And indeed, much of this stuff all comes from circles who want to scupper the talks. And the best way to scupper talks is to try to pretend that you know all about what's going on and therefore frighten people with all sorts of fantasies. And some of the figures I've seen quoted are just fantastic.
So the battle in Brussels over the new round of GATT negotiations is far from over, with those who leaked these documents apparently believing it's still not too late to help the French government in their determination to stop a settlement, even at the cost of a transatlantic trade war. James Robbins, BBC News, Brussels.
Here, the Chancellor says he won't rule out tax increases in next year's budget. Norman Lamont said he was concerned about the level of government borrowing, but he said the new measures in his autumn budget would help the economy. Ministers' attempts to restore confidence are being hampered by continuing questions over the export of arms equipment to Iraq.
And I commend it to the House.
At the end of the Chancellor's autumn statement, Conservative MPs expressed relief and genuine delight at the package. But now the details have been digested, the opposition are asking how the high borrowing will be paid for and whether enough was done to stimulate recovery. Today, the Chancellor admitted his concern about the amount being borrowed by the government.
Borrowing is a worrying feature of the present situation, and any Chancellor must always have an eye on what borrowing is doing to the stock of debt, the national debt of the country.
He refused to rule out tax increases next year, but acknowledged election promises that seemed to exclude them.
We have particular pledges which we will stick to. That is our habit, to stick to our election pledges. This government is not in the habit of breaking them and doesn't intend to.
Well, what's now becoming clear about Mr Lamont's new economic policy is that unemployment is going to continue to rise for many months to come. Inflation will also rise, investment is going to stagnate, and there's a contradiction between him saying he'll keep to his election promises about tax and his unwillingness to rule out tax increases in the coming budget.
But in his constituency after the autumn statement, the Prime Minister suggested it would be a turning point. Ministers wanted a campaign to restore confidence in the economy and the government itself. But the end of the Matrix Churchill trial and the release of documents on arms exports to Iraq have prevented them from pursuing their chosen path. For an hour this lunchtime, a cabinet minister had to fend off questions about the affair when he wanted to talk about other subjects.
I was not involved in the details of any of this. I am actually running a department of transport at the moment. I'm very concerned about getting the economic growth moving again. So I've been spending most of my time, nearly all of my time, on the economic issues that I thought we were going to talk about. But what I absolutely do know is that there will be no cover-up in this public inquiry at all.
With the autumn statement delivered, this was the weekend when ministers had planned to go on the offensive over the economy. But this accident-prone government has been diverted once more, and Labour plan to publish more documents about exports to Iraq tomorrow.
Security in Belfast has been visibly stepped up this evening after a weekend of violence which claimed 2 more lives today. A third man died of his injuries after yesterday's attack by loyalist terrorists on a bookmaker's shop, and a policeman died after being shot at a checkpoint in County Fermanagh.
Soldiers and police on the streets of Belfast this evening. Overt security, according to sources, increased against the threat of even more violence, with the position in provincial towns under review. Simple bunches of flowers mark the scene where, for the second time this year, gunmen attacked a betting shop simply to murder the Catholics they thought would be inside. But 2 of the injured are Protestant, the same religion as the killers who fired 40 bullets and then threw a hand grenade inside. The sister of one of the victims, John Lovett, says he died trying to save others.
He saw the person opening their coat to take out a gun, and it would seem, according to what I've been told, that he pushed a couple of young people out of his way and threw himself on top of somebody, which was the reason that he got all the injuries he did in his back.
John Lovett's death is a particularly poignant tragedy for the family, that those who think of themselves as loyalists should murder a World War II RAF veteran who suffered greatly as a Japanese prisoner of war.
And they don't stop to think about it, you know. Look at a man like that and think, well, maybe that man fought in the war and he helped to save my country or my parents from from Germany or Hitler or whatever. I mean, because I think a lot of these people are so full of hate, and, you know, that they really can't think of anything else.
The MP for North Belfast said the killer's claim that the attack was retaliation for IRA bombings was crazy.
It'll be viewed in the world outside as two communities just destroying each other. It's a crazy situation, a crazy solution to any of our problems.
The fourth murder of the weekend was in County Fermanagh. 25-year-old Alan Corbett, a full-time member of the RUC's reserve, died after being hit by a single shot from a sniper. He was a member of a joint police and army foot patrol in Belcoo village, right on the border with the Irish Republic. It's clear no level of security can prevent all attacks by Republicans and loyalists. With so many potential targets, the gunmen and bombers have a lethal advantage over the security forces.
Scotland Yard has asked for witnesses who may have seen the lorry that was stopped by police in North London yesterday and found to contain a huge 1-ton bomb. They're continuing to hunt for a man who's been on the run since a police officer was shot and wounded. The second man is still being questioned.
The police say that the lorry which contained the 1-ton bomb is very distinctive. It had been badly resprayed, turning it dark blue. The back of its wing mirrors and the reflectors covering its rear lights had painted on them the number 1241. And the Volvo sign on the radiator grille had the final O of the name missing. Detectives from the anti-terrorist branch hope that all this may help to jog someone's memory. They want to talk to anyone who may have seen the vehicle in the last month or so. It could have been left almost anywhere during that time, from a lorry park to a backyard, or even simply left on the street. The hunt for the one would-be bomber who got away from the police early yesterday goes on, while a second man arrested shortly afterwards in Stoke Newington is still being held. PC Ray Hall, one of the two unarmed policemen who stopped the lorry on a routine check and was shot twice pursuing the men, remains in hospital. He's said to be comfortable with his condition improving all the time.
A request for British UN soldiers in Bosnia to help rescue Muslim refugees trapped by the fighting has been withdrawn. The local Muslim commander says most have already moved to safety. British troops based at Vitez had been standing by to carry out the rescue if a ceasefire could be arranged.
The limits of the UN's powers are clear to these people. They fled their village yesterday and then came under fire on the road down the valley.
It was very difficult because we were shelled as we were leaving from Karaula to Travnik. There are people who are dead, there are cars wrecked, lying on the side of the road. It was very difficult, and we are very lucky that we survived.
About 500 villagers and retreating fighters had appealed to the British to help them. Why didn't they come? Because the UN may not get in among the fighting, however much the temptation to save lives. The British commander went up the valley to try and get a ceasefire, but the local Serb commander refused to talk to the UN. His men were busy, still on the attack. The people of this town are about to lose their homes and become refugees. Their army can't stop the Serb advance. There's nothing they can do about it, nor can the UN. Even though the UN, in the form of the British, give the look of a formidable fighting force as the warriors rolled into their base tonight. But their task is limited, as the refugees have already learned. Kate Adey, BBC News, Vitez.
Church of England congregations have been gathering today for the first time since Wednesday's historic vote in favour of the ordination of women. Around 1,000 priests have threatened to leave the church in protest. But the Archbishop of Canterbury, George Carey, said he'd be amazed if there was a mass defection. He admitted he would have considered resigning if the General Synod had voted against women priests.
Holy Cross Greenford in Middlesex is one of the churches which has campaigned longest for women's ordination. Virtually every member had been praying for a yes vote.
You can't imagine how relieved I am to be standing here this morning talking to you after a yes to the ordination of women to the priesthood.
Their deacon, Sally Rogers, has been inundated with messages of congratulation. In a sign of changing times, the church marked the first Sunday after the vote with a special litany. Men confessed their sin in having held women back.
We have denied the authority of women and limited their gifts.
and nothing is hidden.
Worshippers welcomed the beginning of a new chapter.
On reflection, a great deal of prayer and thought over the last few weeks, I've come to the conclusion, well, why not? Why not women?
I feel it was long overdue.
Until Wednesday, there were women leaving the church, there were women unable to take communion. I spoke to somebody last night who today, for the first time for years, actually now feels able to go to church and receive communion.
Putting on a brave face today, the traditionalists who lost. Father Martin Flatman of Oxford, the first priest publicly to announce his plans to resign, told his flock he was media victim of the week.
I think it's very sad that he's leaving. We've just got to cling to our faith and cling to our Lord and hope that things will all be resolved.
As women light candles to symbolise their new authority in the church, groups which can't accept it hold their first formal meeting tomorrow. It'll put to the test Dr. Carey's appeal for an end to instant defections.
That's all from the newsroom this weekend. Good night.
Crack cocaine is one of the most dangerous drugs known to man. It has reached the streets of Britain's cities and threatens to become an epidemic. With it comes destruction, gun law and violence. In a specially extended edition, Panorama goes to the coca fields of Colombia with Home Secretary Kenneth Clarke and reports on Britain's attempts to stem the growing traffic. That's Crack UK, Britain's war on cocaine, tomorrow night on Panorama at 9:30.
A very good evening to you. This is Bill Giles. I'm sorry you're not getting your normal weather service at the moment. We've had a power cut and the studio lights have just come back on again, but I can give you a forecast nonetheless. Now, most places will have a cloudy and rather misty night. Some fog patches are likely, especially over central and southern parts of both England and Wales. Rain will spread across Northern Ireland and Scotland after midnight. Some of it will be heavy and may well start as snow over the Scottish mountains. There'll be a frost in central and eastern Scotland, but temperatures will rise later in the night. Tomorrow, Scotland and Northern Ireland will start dull, wet and windy, and this rain will spread across the whole of England and Wales during the morning, to be followed by sunshine and blustery showers. But the brighter weather will not reach all of the east coast until after dark. Now, it'll feel cold tomorrow in the strong west and northwesterly winds, with temperatures between 5 and 9 degrees Celsius. Well, that's the way the weather looks just at the moment. I shall be back again tomorrow. Do join me then.
Tomorrow in El Dorado.
I should know what's happening.
You should know all you need to know, and nothing else.
The first thing I'm going to do is screen the place down. The second thing I'm going to do is defend myself, and I warn you, I'm very well qualified.
He had visitors, very unfriendly visitors.
I don't like this, Marcus. I don't like it one bit.
She, like you, should learn to keep her little mouth shut.
You don't understand. They could deport me.
You wouldn't hit me.
Don't put money on it.
El Dorado, tomorrow at 7 on 1.
Every Man in 50 Minutes explores the complex reactions of a family in which a young daughter attempted to take her own life and discovers how they finally came to understand each other. Now on 1, the final part of Stephen Lowe's psychological thriller, Telltale Hearts.